Thank you, and good evening to everyone from Japan, from Kyoto. As Dr. Mushtaq mentioned that I'm currently based in Kyoto, and today I will be talking about role of urban planning. They are not sort of new models for circular economy or sustainable cities. Most of them are rather based on, let's say, very tested theories and sort of more based on the common sense, I usually say to whenever I try to present them. Just starting with some background, everybody knows about these facts, so it'll be just very quick. That we are getting more and more urbanized cities, urbanization, urbanized population. This data is from European cities, a little bit old as well, but what we are seeing that is still even quite developed cities or quite developed countries are still getting more and more land urbanized, right? And most of this urbanization land is coming from what I call prime land, right? Most of them are coming from agricultural based land and even forest. So expanding cities, especially in a very unsustainable way, is actually eating up our carbon sinks as well. So as I mentioning that most of this type of uptake for urban and other artificial development usually comes from very prime land, and if it is replaced by something like what we are seeing in this picture, I think that is sort of a disaster or catastrophe in a sense, because this type of urbanization or this type of urban planning generates not only more traffic to your roads, because all of them are based on the car use. They are also, as we are seeing over here, maybe taking some share of our carbon sink with it, right? And also they can be they can affect the food security or the mileage particular amount of food travels to, because otherwise these lands could have been producing food which could be consumed within or very nearby cities in a sense, right? Other things, as I mentioned already here, like most of these houses are based on the car travel, and their shopping pattern also leads basically to overconsumption, I must say, of about of our available transport capacity, right? So when we face this type of problems in urban planning or in transportation planning, so far the ideas were mainly based on this build more and more capacity. Now you can already see here we are looking at a picture which has already 3 tiers, right? And where we can go from here. If we keep constructing new and new infrastructure for cars, it has been experienced by many cities that most of this capacity is soon taken over, and this may not be a good choice for our let's say future development or sustainable development, maybe we can say. So what we are actually facing, the problem generated was not new. It was based in our theories that we established for urban planning. For example, this type of pyramid style zoning was very common, very famous. I think still many cities are following this type of pyramid style zoning, where you are separating basically work and commercial areas from your residential areas. So if you do that one, of course, it will lead to more and more consumption of land, on one hand, and also more and more consumption of your transportation facilities. And it will be very difficult to do any sort of sharing based economy or any sort of circular based economy on them. right? As I mentioned, some of these problems already. So what actually went wrong was that we shifted from our natural sort of habitat style, which was more of the mixed land or mixed use neighborhoods where we used to live. The distances that we could have, that we could travel were not so big, and so we could live in a sort of compact city where we can shop, we can work, and also the density was sort of a little bit more as compared to what we are seeing in some of the modern urban planning objectives. I wouldn't say modern, because now things are changing, because we are learning continuously that what we were doing, especially like this type of planning or this type of capacity building is not working. So now we are learning more and more, and the future sort of direction is towards this type of development, which we call transit-oriented development, and which tries to provide you with clusters of the residential and working places together, right, linked with this mass transit systems, right, where we can actually try to simulate, for example, sort of little bit sustainable cities like Tokyo, maybe, for example. You can see that almost all of the Tokyo is covered by this 800-meter radius from railways, right? And these neighborhoods are quite walkable, and you can actually see their impact on the overall transportation also. So many people come and commute to Kyoto or to Tokyo and within Tokyo also, but still I think the traffic conditions or traffic sense is not as worst as it could have been with that many commuters and that many population. Okay, so what we need to do is, as I mentioned, it's not so difficult to understand. It's not very difficult concept. It's just to think about accessibility when we consider our transport choice, or when we consider our urban planning choice. Right? We want to give more and more access to people, to work, to commercial activity, of course, and a better living environment for everybody. Right? So we have to actually prioritize high value but low cost trips in a sense of social cost that we are paying for them. And although we have a lot of engineering options for them, but unless we don't change the driver's behavior, we don't change the behavior of people, it is very difficult to understand or to achieve these objectives. So we need to actually educate people that we have to abandon sort of, or maybe reduce at least, this individual based transport and like individual objectives. We have to sort of sacrifice individual objectives to get more shared objectives for everybody, right? And these pictures, that's maybe you have seen many times, but these are the actual solution where you need to go, and where you have to educate people also that they can change from individualism to more sharing and more circular sort of systems. This can be done even, of course, without big public transport. Car sharing it was a big phenomena, still it is, but in I would say early 2000 or that time maybe, and maybe everybody know about, they started with this initiative of Zipcar, for example, and now almost every big city they have some sort of car sharing, and basically we can reduce the number of traffic with them. Other technologies are also good, but when I look at this particular graphic, I like it every time I look at it, because what we are thinking, most of the people are thinking about a future or modern city with electric cars, or for example with autonomous cars, but we have to understand that the modern city, or if you want to improve the life or the quality, life quality of everyone in the city, you have to go for the shared modes, more non-auto based modes, right? More walking, more cycling, maybe cars, but more with the shared cars, right? Not with the individual cars, and of course with the public transport also. Not only in the transport of passengers, but we have to think about other transportations as well, as for example Dr. Mushtaq was mentioning about reverse logistics or collection of waste and other type of things. This is one of the model that we try to sort of steady also, but it's now getting more and more popular in many cities around the world, especially in Japan, where we try to replace these individual carriers again with some sort of shared carriers, right? So the idea is that instead of these individual carriers go and visit houses or markets or let's say residential areas or commercial areas, they can come to a facility where we can combine all the stuff, right? And instead of individual sort of parcels, we can send combined or sort of more cooperative way the freight deliveries as well as the pickups, right? And when we are sort of working on this type of models, if you think that this model is working for a shopping street or for a shopping mall, for example, it's all it's not only good for the supply side or the delivery side, it's also good for the pickup side. You can collect goods, but you can also collect some let's say unused item or reusable items also, and then you can take them and reprocess them. These ideas are also good for the recycling and for the reverse logistics as well. This idea is, as I said, is expanding, and people are trying in different fashions. For example, this idea was also introduced in the construction industry, for example, and the idea converted into construction consolidation centers, where when we are trying to construct buildings, for example, in the city center, instead of allowing all these suppliers to go and individually supply to these construction sites, what we can do is to create a consolidation center, right? And then receive major or bulk amount of goods here and just transport the daily required material or construction or repair, whatever type. And then also we can use this model to collect unused material or to collect waste from these sites to take them back to the consolidation center, and from here, of course, to other services for the recycling and other stuff. Just to give you some hint that this type of facilities actually can pay off also in some sense, is that we can see over here that when about maybe 200,000 pound worth of material was in a sense recycled, we can say, because otherwise it would have been just discarded by some way. So it was possible to return this over ordered material and save this worth. Maybe this material can be used in some other places also, and also it also facilitated the use of this reusable pallets over here, reusable cables and packages also, right? So in whole, as I mentioned, this urban planning models for circular economy or sustainable cities are not so complicated. They are simple ideas, right? Not like everybody can think about them, but it's always implementation that sometimes is difficult. Sometimes you have to educate people and politicians and policymakers to actually go with this type of not so, let's say, big projects, but ideas. So from urban planning perspective, I would say compact cities, right, with mixed land use that allow work and some sort of shopping or commercial activities merged together with residential areas will reduce our land use requirement also, and will also reduce our transportation requirement also, more and less energy requirement as well. Connecting these compact cities or connect these compact neighborhoods, walkable neighborhoods with transit, so that we can achieve a little bit bigger cities as well, but with these clusters which are connected together with public transport and with shared mobility, increasing our accessibility overall. And in last, just I showed you some concepts in the freight transport also can be use or implement, not to just look at, for example, only in one direction of transport, but look at transport and planning and urban planning as whole, as a one package. I think that is the basic model for future cities or our circular cities. With that one, I think that was a sort of very general overview. When I was asked to talk about the role of urban planning, I thought general ideas are good. Maybe then we can have some discussion points where we can discuss about particularities as well. Thank you very much for your attention.